this is the Mi 10i, aka the Redmi Note 9 Pro 5G, aka the Mi 10T Lite. And I've been using this phone for more than a week now, and in this review, I'm going to answer the most important question. Should you buy the Mi 10i at rupees 21,999? I mean, it's obvious that Xiaomi is aiming towards the likes of the OnePlus Nord, the Moto G5G with the Mi 10i. So is the Mi 10i kind of like the new mid-range king in 2021? Another doubt I have is how does the 750G perform, because I ran into some issues with the 750G optimization on the Moto G5G. So yeah, that's another question. So I'm going to answer all of those questions, but first let me tell you all about my experience. So the first thing that came into my mind when I unboxed the Mi 10i is OnePlus 7T. I mean, the back, look at it. It's clear that the Mi 10i gives off 7T vibes, right? The second thing that came to my mind is that this color looks, yep, you guessed it, beautiful. Yes, this matte Gorilla Glass 5 bag with this blue and pink gradient mix looks absolutely stunning. I mean, I've had a number of people ask me which phone is this, and yeah, I think this definitely looks good, no doubt. The third thought was that this phone is kind of big and hefty. 9mm thickness from the sides, 215 grams in weight, so this is by no means a light or compact phone. I mean, there's even a camera bump which isn't very big, but it is noticeable in the hands. See, I still like the Mi 10i way more than the Moto G5G because it's definitely more premium and has a similar weight thickness. Now, compared to the Nord, the OnePlus Nord is more handy and comfortable in the hands, but the looks are subjective. I personally like this matte back on the Mi 10i because it, I think, looks good, and there's also more grip. See, apart from the fact that this is a big phone, it's kind of hefty, I like the Mi 10i's design. I think it looks very premium, and it's also got all the functionality that you need. So there's the headphone jack, dual SIM micro SD hybrid slot, an infrared sensor, notification LED, IP53 rating for splash resistance, side mounted fingerprint scanner which is very fast and accurate, and there's stereo speakers which, by the way, are good enough. They're fairly loud, and I like that the speaker on the top isn't very muted, so you get to hear things properly even when you have the bottom speaker muffled up. As for the front, the Mi 10i has a 6.67-inch IPS LCD display, and honestly I would have liked an AMOLED panel since it's 2021 now and mid-rangers should come with AMOLED. But this display, for what it's worth, is a very good LCD display. It is HDR and HDR10 Plus compliant, and there's also L1 certification, so Netflix and Prime Video playback is no problem. As for the display quality, the colors look nice, and while the contrast isn't out of the world, it's pretty good for an LCD display. As for the brightness, the display is set to go till 450 nits, and I did not really notice any major issues outdoors, but on a very sunny day I did feel the panel wasn't the brightest, so obviously I compared it to the OnePlus Nord, and yes, the Nord's AMOLED is definitely brighter, as you can see. Anyway, the display here also has a high 120Hz refresh rate which changes dynamically depending on the app. It changes to 30, 24, 48, 60, 90, 120, and Xiaomi calls it adaptive sync. Now generally the display is very smooth when set to 120Hz, but there were times when I did feel that 120Hz wasn't really as smooth. And that's because sometimes I noticed that this adaptive sync feature tends to result in frame drops when switching between apps, and that's probably because it's dynamically changing the refresh rate. It's not a big problem, but I did notice it. So that was the design and the display. Now one thing I was excited to check out in the Mi 10i was the camera, especially the main 108MP camera. So as you guys know, the Mi 10i has a new, more compact Samsung HM2 108MP sensor with f1.8 aperture and 0.7 micron pixels. Now I know smaller pixels means less light, but thanks to 9-in-1 pixel binning, the HM2 sensor actually creates one large pixel of 2.1 microns. And like I said, the bigger the pixel, the more light the sensor can capture. So yes, I was excited to check out the low light performance, especially from the new HM2 sensor. And after taking a ton of photos with this camera, I can tell you that the Mi 10i's 108MP camera is actually very good. I mean, the daytime photos are really good. They're sharp, color accurate mostly, and very detailed. And the dynamic range is brilliant too in some shots, like in this photo, just look at the sky. Now, I did notice some over sharpening at times, but it's nothing too major. As for the low light, and that's what I was really interested in, I have been really impressed with the Mi 10i. See, like I expected, the sensor captures a lot of light and the photos are very sharp and very nice. Now, there is a bit of noise in a few photos, but it's overall managed really well and I like the low light photos. Now, honestly, I found the Mi 10i's 108MP very good because of two reasons. First is obviously the price of the phone. The camera performance to price ratio is very good. And second, it's because I compared the Mi 10i's camera to the OnePlus Nord. So here are some comparison shots, and to be honest, in daytime, it's not a big difference. Both phones do well. I find the Mi 10i's photos a little more contrasty and thus more appealing, but I think the Nord is fine too. It's very on par. Low light is where the difference lies. The Mi 10i's low light shots are just more sharper when compared to the Nord. See, the Nord shots are kind of fuzzy and some shots have this warmer tone which isn't really accurate. And yeah, the Mi 10i's low light shots are just overall better. So the 108 megapixel sensor is actually great. Now coming to the ultra wide angle lens, I think it's kind of fine, nothing exceptional. See, when there's a lot of light, it does well, but the moment the light drops, even in daytime, the photos lose detail and sharpness at the edges. I also took a lot of portrait mode shots, and portrait mode shots definitely are very good. The edge detection is very accurate and there is a bit of saturation going on and the contrast goes higher too, but they look nice as far as portrait mode shots go. Moving on to the videos, there's 4K 30fps video support. I would have liked 4K 60fps since 750G supports that, but yeah, 4K 30fps it is. Anyway, so I've taken a lot of videos from this phone and I found the video quality to be overall good with natural colors and nice dynamic range. The exposure adjustment could have been a little better at times with moving videos, but I wouldn't say it's bad. As for the stability, there's only EIS, which works when you're walking or just moving around, but yeah, in a moving vehicle with a lot of bumps, not very good, which is kind of expected. The front camera is a 16 megapixel camera and the selfies from the phone were mostly consistent with good overall exposure and details, so no problems here. So the camera, especially the main camera, is a win on the Mi 10i. Now let's talk about the performance. I think you already know the specs, but here they are. So there's Snapdragon 750G, Adreno 619, LPDDR4X RAM, UFS 2.2 storage. So the specs are good. I mean, the Snapdragon 750G is actually close to the 765G. I mean, there are obviously differences like the fact that the 750G has the more powerful CPU because it has the faster Cortex A77 based Kryo 570 CPU compared to the Cortex A76 based Kryo 475 CPU on the 765G. However, it has the weaker GPU in the form of the Adreno 619 compared to the Adreno 620 on the 765G. There are other differences too, like the clock speed and the fact that the 750G is an 8nm chipset and the 765G is a 7nm chipset. But overall, these chipsets have their advantages, but they are close when it comes to benchmarks or even real-world performance. Now talking about that, the Mi 10i has been working fine for me for the past week or so. There's no major lag or anything, and I played a lot of COD Mobile on this phone with graphics set to very high and frame rate set to max, and the gameplay was smooth and consistent almost always. I mean, the overall performance isn't always perfect. I did notice some apps crashing. For example, I can't get Geekbench 5 to complete a benchmark test. It always crashes. I also noticed a few minor stutters when I was scrolling in the app drawer. It's honestly the same issue I also faced while using the Moto G 5G. It's probably not visible on camera, but the Nord does not have any stutters while scrolling. So maybe it's a 750G optimization issue. Having said that, last night the Mi 10i received an update, MIUI 12.0.4, that's set to bring performance improvements, and the scrolling definitely seems better, but I've only used it for a day, so we'll see. See, I'll put it this way, the day-to-day performance on the Mi 10i is good. There are a few stumbles on the way, but they did not really bother me much because they are very occasional. Oh, and by the way, the phone has UFS 2.2 storage, which is said to be faster than UFS 2.1. Well, I did the CPDT benchmark on the Mi 10i and the OnePlus Nord to, check the storage speeds. And as you can see in these screenshots, the UFS 2.2 storage is a little faster when it comes to sequential read and random read-write tests. On the software front, there's MIUI 12 with Android 10, and it's the usual MIUI, but it has Google Apps for phone, messages, etc. And as for ads and bloatware, there are no ads, but bloatware, yes. There are these games which I uninstalled straight away, and there's Facebook, Amazon, WPS Office, and LinkedIn. And all of these can be uninstalled, so that's good. Lastly, let me talk about the battery and the charging performance of the Mi 10i. So the Mi 10i has a decently big battery at 4820 mAh, and I was kind of expecting decent-ish performance, but it was generally better than what I expected. So with the display set to 120Hz, I got a screen on time of around 6 hours, 6.5 hours, almost always, and that included gaming, almost 1.5 hours, 2 hours of COD Mobile, so that screen on time is very good. Now with the display set to 60Hz, I got a screen on time of around 7 hours, which is also very good. Now you'll obviously be using this phone with the screen set to 120Hz, and that's where the battery life matters a lot, and I think the Mi 10i does a very good job at that. The phone charges very quickly too, thanks to this 33 watt charger that you get in the box. I noted things down, so after 30 minutes of charging, the phone went from 10 to 72%, which is definitely very fast. The phone took a total of 55 minutes to go from 10 to 100%, so yeah, it's very fast. Now coming to the pricing, Xiaomi has done a very similar job to OnePlus by launching a 6 plus 64GB variant that's coming soon. So I'm going to consider the 6 plus 128GB at rupees 21,999, the base variant, the phone that people are actually going to buy. So coming to the verdict, should you buy the Mi 10i at rupees 21,999? Well, the answer is, I think this is a phone that I can recommend. See, this is not a perfect phone. It has its problems. First up, like I said, this is a big and hefty phone. There's no doubt about that. Second, it does not have AMOLED, and yeah, there are a few minor performance issues that I talked about. So the Mi 10i is not perfect, but if you're okay with all of those things, overall I think the price is justified and it's a very balanced smartphone. The design is very premium and does not miss out on any important functionality. The display is good enough for an IPS LCD. The 750G is a fairly powerful chipset with 5G, and the 108 megapixel camera is actually very good and even better than the Nord's main camera. See, if you don't like MIUI, I don't think you should settle for the Moto G5G just for stock Android. Instead, I think you should spend a little more and get the OnePlus Nord, which is more compact, has AMOLED and 765G, but yes, it's kind of pricey at 28K. Having said that, if you're okay with MIUI, the big size of the phone, and you're looking for a good all-round smartphone at 22-23K, the Mi 10i is actually a good option. Well, that was my review of the Mi 10i, but I'd love to know what you guys think. Tell us in the comment section below. Also give this video a like, make sure to share it, and yeah, subscribe to our channel for more amazing tech videos, more reviews. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.